tools for thinking. What accelerated this evolution in our ancestral line beyond what was happening in other apes? And how did this give rise to new ways of thinking? Aside from walking on two legs, our early ancestors were distinctly ape-like, and like chimps and other primates, they probably had limited tool use, such as picking pebbles off the ground to crush nuts. But things changed around 3.3 million years ago in what is now Kenya. Rather than just using nature as they found it around them, the ancient hominins began to modify it, wielding one stone to chip the end off another and using the resulting sharp edge to butcher meat. The idea of using one tool to create a more useful implement is a conceptual leap. But just as important is the fact that it takes dexterity and motor control not seen in other apes to create the tool. This includes coordinating your limbs so that one hand is doing a different job from the other, movements that chimps struggle to master. Even with that trigger, our ancestors were slow to advance. Things didn't begin to take off until Homo erectus, about 1 million years later. Homo erectus is significant for many reasons. As well as having broadly similar bodies to modern humans, they lived in bigger social groups than their predecessors. Successful communal living requires both cooperation and the ability to detect and punish cheats who try to get something for nothing. Those challenges may have spurred the evolution of complex emotions such as shame and embarrassment, which would help individuals toe the line. But what really marks out the thinking of Homo erectus is encapsulated in the genesis of another tool, known as an Acheulean hand axe. The first attempts at designing such a tool, which date from around 1.5 million years ago, were fairly crude, but over the following million years, these leaf-shaped Acheulean axes became thinner and more symmetrical as they began to embody a more systematic style of working. Breaking down a goal into a series of smaller actions in this way shows the beginnings of hierarchical thinking. Chunking and sequencing our actions seems so central to the way we operate today, whether we are making a cup of tea or running a bath, that it's almost impossible to imagine our minds working in any other way. But the sophisticated later versions of the Acheulean axe offer some of the first signs that our ancestors were beginning to develop the ability to organize their thoughts in these more complicated ways. Hierarchical thinking has been linked to another milestone in human cognition: language. It is such a complex system, dependent on many different thought processes, that its origins have been described as evolution's biggest mystery. But some evidence suggests that tool-making could have been a catalyst in its development. Articulate vocalization requires precise movements of the lips and tongue. Chimps and other primates are unable to achieve these, but for our ancestors, tool-making drove the development of the brain areas involved in motor control that were later co-opted for speech. And the sequential thinking needed to create these hand axes is similar to the thinking that allows us to understand and construct sentences.